In 2009, Richard Mack McKinney, a former United States Marine Corps USMC member, came to the Islamic Center of Muncie in Muncie, Indiana, with intentions far from good. His decision to attack the mosque was not a sudden one, but the result of years of deep-seated hatred toward Islam. This hatred was born from the bitter experiences he endured while serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, two war zones that led him to see the world in black and white, where the enemy was deemed unworthy of life. When McKinney returned to his hometown, his anger grew, fueled by the presence of an increasingly vibrant Muslim community in the small town. McKinney felt that the presence of Muslims in Muncie was an insult to the sacrifices he had made on the battlefield. To him, they symbolized everything he despised, and in his rage-filled mind, they were a threat that needed to be destroyed. He viewed their presence as a mockery of his struggles, a direct confrontation with the pain he endured after fighting in the war. The more he saw Muslim children attending school with his daughter, the deeper his hatred grew. "I told people that Islam was a cancer, and I was the surgeon to cure it," McKinney admitted. One fateful day, McKinney went to the Islamic Center of Muncie, carrying a bomb he intended to use to kill as many people as possible inside. The USMC tattoos on his body, particularly a skull tattoo on his arm, made it clear he was not there with good intentions. With his head down and his face flushed red with anger, he walked into the mosque, which was crowded with worshipers attending Friday prayers. For McKinney, this was a moment of reckoning, a mission he had long planned. However, what he encountered there was entirely unexpected. Instead of the fear and darkness he had anticipated, McKinney was met with an entirely different response. The people he intended to annihilate ended up saving his life. As he approached the mosque, one of the Muslim community members, Jomo Williams, who was present at the time, sensed something was off. He was walking a bit fast, his head slightly down, and his face was a bit red, Williams recalled. A sense of unease immediately set in. McKinney, approaching the mosque with burning hatred, was unaware that the people inside did not see him as a threat, but as a human being who could be saved. When he finally reached the group, several individuals displayed extraordinary courage by approaching him. They did not back away or flee. Instead, they confronted him in a completely unexpected way, with kindness and bravery. They saw that behind his hatred was a wounded man who needed healing, not destruction. Even more surprising was the action of Mohammed Bahrami, one of the founders of the Islamic Center of Muncie, who unhesitatingly approached McKinney and embraced him tightly. Bahrami, an Afghan native, wept as he hugged McKinney, whose confusion was evident. "To this day, it still doesn't make sense to me," McKinney later admitted, reflecting on the moment. He couldn't comprehend how someone who was supposed to be his enemy could be so full of love and forgiveness. To him, Bahrami was an unexpected brother who gave him a new lease on life. Following the incident, McKinney felt torn and bewildered. For years, he had been consumed by hatred toward Muslims. But on that most unexpected day, he discovered something far stronger than his hatred: forgiveness. The decision to return to the mosque and try to understand the religion he had long considered his enemy was not an easy one. Yet slowly but surely, he began to feel something he had never experienced before, a sense of peace and calm that defied words. He returned to the Islamic Center of Muncie, this time with a slightly more open heart. He began reading the Quran, and although he initially felt alienated by its teachings, the deeper he delved, the more he experienced a peace he had never known in his life. Months passed, and McKinney began to change. The fiery hatred that once consumed him gradually faded, replaced by genuine understanding and compassion. Finally, 8 months after his dramatic encounter with the Muslim community in Muncie, McKinney decided to take a significant step. He recited the Shahada, declaring himself a Muslim. The moment was deeply emotional, and as he joined the community he once sought to destroy, he was welcomed with open arms and prayers. They did not see McKinney as an enemy, but as a brother who had found his way home, back to the path of truth. McKinney's journey did not end there. Over the next 2 years, he was even elected president of the Islamic Center of Muncie. From someone who once carried a bomb to destroy, he now stood as a leader inspiring others to love and understand one another. He turned his hatred into a force for peace, and he continues to share his life story with the world, showing that no hatred is too great to be transformed by love. McKinney is no longer a stranger at the gates. He has found a community that healed his wounds and gave new meaning to his life. He found brothers and sisters not on the battlefield, but through sincere faith. This dramatic story demonstrates to the world that even in the darkest moments, there is always a light ready to guide someone toward extraordinary change. Tears filled their eyes. The sobs echoed through the pews of a church that had once been warmed by the sermons of a man they so deeply respected. The name Hilarion Higi, once whispered with admiration, was now shrouded in sorrow and loss. The kind-hearted pastor, the patient spiritual guide, had made a choice that stunned his entire community. He had turned away from Christ. He had chosen Islam. The moment that changed everything happened on February 22nd, 2023, when Hilarion Higi officially recited the Shahada and became a Muslim. The world watched in astonishment. Among Christians, his decision was like a bolt of lightning in broad daylight, splitting their hearts with pain and confusion. They wondered, why did he leave us? Why did he abandon the faith that had elevated him to a place of honor? But for Higi, now known as Sayyid Abdul Latif, his decision was a long journey toward a truth that had burned within him for over 20 years. "The fire of Islam has kindled my soul," he said, his voice shaking the hearts of those who heard him. "I tried to close my eyes, tried to ignore it, but the flame never died. I realized it wasn't a fire of destruction, but a guiding light." It all began at a small Islamic center, hidden in the Rust Belt of Appalachia. At the time, he was merely a spiritual wanderer, full of questions and doubt. But there, he found something he had never experienced before, a peace that seeped into the deepest recesses of his soul. From that moment, the call of Islam resonated in his heart, even as he continued walking a different path. When he finally declared his intention to convert in October 2022, a storm began to gather around his life. Those closest to him tried to persuade him to return, but Higi knew there was no turning back. Every time he looked within, he found a growing longing to prostrate before the one God, uniting in love with the Creator, humanity, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. "Islam is my home," he said, his eyes filled with conviction. "I feel like a child who had been lost for so long, and I have finally come home. It feels peaceful, like feeling the warmth of an embrace after years of cold." The welcome from the Muslim community was heartwarming. He, once a leader, now stood among them as a brother, greeted with smiles and open arms. Their hospitality, their warmth, "I've never felt anything like it before," he said softly. "They accepted me unconditionally. Their love is a reflection of true Islam." Higi had once been a Byzantine Catholic priest at the Holy Resurrection Monastery in Wisconsin, revered for his wisdom and praised for his patience. But the life he left behind is now a shadow of the past. He had dreamed of building an Eastern Christian monastery in California, a grand vision he now released with a light heart. For him, his spiritual journey had reached its true destination. After declaring his faith in Islam, his phone never stopped ringing. Messages poured in from around the world, some filled with curiosity, others with anger. "Why did you leave Christ?" was the question that relentlessly followed him. Yet with his characteristic gentleness, Sayyid Abdul Latif responded, "I never abandoned my love for God. I simply found it more deeply and truly in Islam." Now, his old name is swept away like dust from a road. Sayyid Abdul Latif has found his true home, where his heart is no longer restless and his soul no longer lost. The world may mourn his departure, but he knows this journey was the destiny that had long awaited him. And finally, he is home. Hilarion Higi's journey to Islam is a story of the courage to follow the heart's calling, even if it means leaving behind everything he once knew and loved. Amid the tears of those who grieve and the astonishment of a watching world, this tale reminds us that the search for true truth knows no bounds, and faith is a deeply personal journey filled with mystery. As Sayyid Abdul Latif, he has found the peace he had long sought. Peace in surrendering to Allah, eternal love for the Creator, and unshakable tranquility in Islam. His story will continue to inspire those who dare to walk toward the light, even on lonely and quiet roads. In the end, coming home is not about a place, it is about finding a home within the faith that ignites the soul.